Hey, hello guys, this is the 07. What's up? And just to answer any questions that you might have, that is my mask that I wore for Halloween yesterday. And the one you are probably seeing right now, just saying, so it won't look weird. But hey, what's up guys, this is the 07. This is the final creepypasta of yesterday. It was October, so it's November, but let's just say I uploaded this on Friday. I uploaded this yesterday, clearly. No, the thing that why I didn't upload yesterday is I was trick-or-treating and shit. I know, I sound old, but fuck it, you know. So, yeah, I didn't have time. I was fucking tired. And I'm like, man, fuck this shit, you know. So, yeah, I'm doing it today, and hey, it's one day off, and it's like 3 months off. So, after this one, I will be taking a break because I gotta get my grades back up. This is just saying, because I'm in school, don't worry about it. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoy this. This is my favorite creepypasta called The Devil's Game. And please, guys, support this creepypasta because it is awesome. But anyways, guys, I hope you guys enjoy this creepypasta. And please subscribe. And also, thanks to anyone who has watched, subscribed, and liked my videos. I really appreciate it because I do work hard on this. It might not seem like it, but it does take time. So thank you guys. So anyways, guys, this is where I'm gonna stop. Hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and goodbye. This is a set of instructions on how to speak with the devil, which of those of you with any sort of brains might note is a potentially moronic proposition on the face of it, one likely to culminate in a number of thoroughly unpleasant fates. Honestly, it would probably be smarter to publish your credit card number on Facebook or take up a career in crocodile wrestling. But then, that isn't going to stop you, is it? Not if you're certainly interested. At least, technically, if you do everything just right, there's a fair chance you'll walk away scot-free. And that seems to be a reason enough for someone to decide it's a good idea, especially if you're the fate-tempting, thrill-seeking, scared-jumping type, or the desperate type. Which brings me to a point of clarification I ought to make. This is not a manual for any kind of Faustian bargain. You know, the whole sell your soul type of deal. Although if you happen to bring it up in conversation, he certainly wouldn't be the one to refuse. Following through with such a foolhardy bargain, however, would necessitate removing some of the protections which you will put in place for your conversation. And I don't think I need to spell out for you why that would be a bad idea. If you are really mathematically impaired enough to want to trade something that will last an infinite amount of years for something that might last about 90 tops, there are plenty of other rituals out there for you to follow. And this one, if performed correctly, should allow the two of you to talk. This perhaps begs the question of why exactly would you want to speak to the devil in the first place? Maybe some of you just like the idea of making small talk with extremely dangerous occult entities, but for the sake of the human race, I hope most of you aren't quite that stupid. The short answer is, he knows things that some of you may have a deep vested interest in finding out. I mean, he's not omnipotent or anything, much as he might like to pretend otherwise. He's not God, but he definitely has a supernatural advantage over any kind of knowledge any human would be able to obtain. For example, he probably wouldn't be able to predict when the next world war will happen, or tell you the cure for cancer, but he could very well be able to predict the winning numbers of tomorrow's $500 million Powerball drawing, or tell you what deadly undiagnosed condition might be afflicting one of your loved ones. Of course, the Prince of Darkness doesn't just go around giving out winning lottery ticket numbers to anyone who asks, and trusting any sort of information obtained from being commonly known as the father of all lies is liable to land you in a worse situation than you were in when you started. However, if you are really that set on finding something out, and you exhausted all other options, there is a way to try to get accurate information out of it. You see, like so many of the most urbane villains in popular culture, the devil has a bit of a penchant for games, gambling. Of course, the reason why he likes them so much is because he almost always wins. Unless you happen to be a fiddler named Johnny, or being represented by Daniel Webster. You're probably gonna get your ass handed to you. But if you are determined enough to want to face the risk and the long odds, there is a certain game the two of you play to try to win the information you need. First things first though, we'll start off with a description of the summoning process, then get into the rules of the game, some tips on how to play, and finally, of course, the inevitable litany of arcane shit that could go horribly wrong. In order to contact your conversational partner, you'll need to go to church at midnight. It doesn't matter what kind of church, large, small, old or new, liberal or conservative, just as long as you're sure it will be empty. The last thing you want is for some preacher to walk in on you while you're in the middle of this, for the sake of the preacher's well-being as much as your own. The process will probably work best if you try it on a new moon or full moon, Friday the 13th or Halloween. The actual day is less important than the psychological effect it has on you. As long as you don't try it on Christmas Eve or something stupid like that, you should be fine. The time is important though. You don't have to start or end your ritual exactly at 12 a.m. Greenwich Atomic Time or anything, but as a general rule of thumb, you ought to show up a bit before midnight and have everything set up by no later than 10 or 15 after. So, you should show up a lot before midnight if you don't know how you're going to get in. Shockingly enough, most houses of God seem to lock their doors at night, at least if no one's there to watch over them. And remember, we want empty, okay? There's of course certain things you need to bring, and certain things you cannot bring. For this ritual, you'll need a full can of salt. You won't need to use all of it, but it's always better to have more than you need than have less. 7 candles, red or white being preferable, something to light the candles with. You would be shocked how often people forget this, occult ritual or not. They are going to magically light themselves. A length of red string, rope, yarn, or thread, and a full-length mirror or wall mirror. Ideally, you want to find one that is already present in the church. They are a bit unwieldy to be lugging around while you're with you during a break-in. However, if there really isn't any there, you're gonna have to bring your own. You might also find it useful to bring some markers, pencils, paper, or flashlight, or any sort of tools that might be necessary to secure your entrance into the church. You will not be permitted to bring any electronics or timekeeping devices. This includes all cell phones, smartphones, tablets, e-readers, MP3 players, PDAs, calculators, wristwatches, pocket watches, kitchen timers, hourglasses, etc., etc., etc. Seriously, it's worse than the SATs. If you're the type of person who has their smartphone practically wired into your brain, don't worry. You can bring those things to the church with you, as long as you leave them outside of the room in which you'll be doing the ritual in. If you brought some type of flashlight, helpful for finding your way in without attracting any type of unwanted attention, leave that outside too. Also, don't bring any sort of religious paraphernalia to protect you, especially if it pertains to the Abrahamic religions. And yes, if those gothy black earrings you're wearing are right side up, they count. If you have any type of holy symbol like that with you, the devil will simply refuse to show up. Do not worry, you're not going completely unprotected. In fact, most of the supplies with you are not for any sort of devil summoning ritual, but for your own protection. Old superstitions and folk magic remedies to guard oneself from evil, and for what I know of it, the effects mostly based on the power of belief. So there are probably numerous other objects, artifacts, and procedures that would work as well. If you like to face the risk of being left helpless at the mercy of the devil in order to test that theory, feel free to experiment. However, for anyone without a psychotic death wish, I recommend sticking to the ritual as follows. Once you're sure you have all the right supplies with you, make your way into the church and find some place to set up. It could be anywhere from the main sanctuary where services are held to a Sunday school classroom, to a walk-in supply closet. As long as you have a sufficient amount of open floor space and are certain not to be disturbed, this is where the devil will appear when you summon him. As such, you mustn't complete the summoning until you've laid out certain wards around it. First, surround the mirror with an unbroken circle of salt. If the mirror is hanging on the wall or door, lay a semicircle around it instead. Make sure that the salt touches the wall at both ends. Then wrap your red string around the mirror several times. The color red, especially red string, is symbolic of protection in the folklore of many cultures and religions. This is also why red candles are a good idea. Speaking of the candles, set them up around the outside of the circle or semicircle of salt, spaced out at relatively even intervals. No, you don't have to get out a measuring tape and make it perfect, but do at least try to make it look like someone who is old enough to be trusted with matches. Light the candles in a clockwise fashion, being careful not to disturb the salt. If you break the circle, you're going to have to start all over again. Once all the candles are lit and burning strongly, your protective wards are complete, and you are now ready to proceed to the actual summon. To do so, you must first get the devil's attention and demonstrate your resolve by performing some sort of sacrilegious act in the holy space. Turning a crucifix upside down is fairly conventional, but it's not the only option. For example, you could say, I know of a kid who once fulfilled this requirement by scribbling obnoxious graffiti all over a painting of Jesus Christ hanging on a Sunday school classroom. The nice thing about turning a cross upside down is that once you're finished with your encounter, assuming you survived it in one piece, you could just flip it right side up again, and no one's the wiser. Sidestepping the relatively minor but still irritating risk of having your Sunday school turn into a reenactment of the Spanish Inquisition for the next month and a half. After you've finished doing whatever offensive thing you decided on, shut all the doors to the room and turn off all the lights, so that the place is lit only by the candles. Place the mirror and stare deeply into it, concentrating on your desired outcome. There's no incantations or arcane strings of Latin you have to recite. Just look into the mirror and wish as hard as you can for the devil to appear. After a few moments of this, when you feel ready, close your eyes and count to 10. And then open. If all has gone correctly, you will no longer see yourself and your reflection. You will be looking at the devil, or at least looking at the way the devil has chosen to appear to you. Chances are he won't look like your conventional red horned demon with goat legs and a pitchfork, nor any sort of terrible apparition. No point in scaring you off of him. Better lure you in, make you feel safe. To that end, he generally takes the appearance of a fairly average, nondescript human being. If anything, he's prone to vanity and leaning towards the more attractive end of the spectrum. The only real frightening part of him will be his eyes. No matter how hard he tries, he can't hide the sinister gleam, smoldering deeper than malevolent amusement and hunger, like the eyes of a spider contemplating a fly struggling in its web. They're supremely confident, those eyes, confident and without pity. But do not look into them too deeply, or you will begin to feel helpless, paralyzed with dread, losing hope and will to fight. Since you'll probably just be standing there staring at him in shock for a few moments, having on some level expected for the ritual to fail, he'll initiate the conversation by asking you what is that you desire from him. If you can gather your wits enough to string together a coherent sentence, you should respond with something like, I wish to challenge you in a game of question and response. And he will accept your request with a wide, predatory grin of anticipation. He has been playing this game for a long time, and he is very good at it. Most humans, on the other hand, are very bad at it. This gives them a chance to, at least, thoroughly mess with your mind, not most. Well, we'll save that for the litany of shit that could go wrong. You'll have to play it very smart to avoid justifying his expectations. The general rules to the game are very simple, with some few caveats that can make things more complicated. He'll begin by asking you a question. He always initiates the game. No, and it could be anything from a piece of obscure trivia to a riddle, to an extremely personal inquiry. Don't worry, you won't be immediately plunged into hell if you get the answer wrong or anything like that. As a matter of fact, he won't even tell you whether you get the answer right or wrong. After you answer this question, you get to ask him one in return. Now, here is where the consequences of your response come in. If you answer this last question correctly, you'll have to respond to your question as honestly and accurately as he is able. However, if you answered it incorrectly, he is free to lie to you as he sees fit. Perhaps if you ask him something you're better off not knowing, he'll tell you the truth anyways. Most likely, he'll feed you the most insidious and damaging lie he can come up with. Either way, after he's responded, you'll get to ask him a question, and the process will repeat over and over again until you decide to call it quits. Now, you may be sitting there thinking that this sounds fairly easy to get the information you need. All you have to do is wait for a question you can answer correctly, and then take that opportunity to ask him what you really want to know, ignoring everything else that is said. Well, it's not that simple. The devil will never give you an easy question, one that you are completely sure of. He may instead give you questions that you have some vague knowledge of, or think maybe you know the answer but aren't really confident, thus forcing you to endlessly second guess yourself, assessing whether or not you can trust the information he gave you next. Perhaps you'll think that what he said was a lie, wish it was a lie, but be internally consumed by doubt, unable to fully convince yourself that you're wrong. Or perhaps you'll have to make a huge choice based on the information that he gave you, and be tormented by fear and indecisiveness as you realize that your fate, and perhaps the fate of others as well, rests entirely upon whether or not you are able to correctly recall some arcane piece of trivia of things you can't even remember. You'll never remember the exact question that the devil asked you, by the way. That would make it too easy for you to go back and check your response. Or maybe, instead of testing your knowledge, he'll ask you something personal, something you even lie to yourself about. You answer back to him thinking you got the question correctly. No, I don't resent my sister. Yeah, I will turn the money to the police. But he'll know better. He'll know better than you do yourself. And he'll know that you are lying. And he'll lie to you in return. And he'll believe it until you are no longer able to deceive yourself. And by then, you might be too late. Or maybe he won't even give you a chance to get an accurate response at all. Maybe he'll just ask you endless strings of completely impossible questions, making you more and more frustrated and disheartened as you realize you'll never be able to force him to tell you the truth. Questions like, what is the exact height of Mount Everest in centimeters in the year 1666? Or, what is the airspeed velocity of an unrelated swallow? Although knowing his sense of humor, if he ever asked the latter, he might consider African or European a correct response. There are a couple of ways to short-circuit this particular strategy. However, additional rules and courses of actions that make the game more interesting and prevent you from being stonewalled completely. Although in all honesty, he'll probably want to try one of these options anyways. The first option is to ask him a riddle instead of a question. If you somehow manage to stump him, and he answers the riddle wrong or gives up, he'll be obligated to give you a truthful response to your next question. If he answers the riddle correctly, once again, don't worry. He won't pounce you like a sphinx or drag you into hell. What will happen is that he will get a pass, allowing him to lie in response to one of your questions. He would otherwise be obligated to answer truthfully. Honestly, if he gets a pass, you might as well just give up and quit the game right there. It is nearly impossible to determine when he is telling you the truth under the best of conditions, adding another layer of complexity by the constantly trying to figure out when, if he is using his pass. It is enough to make any normal person's brain explode. There's no ways, just forget it. The second option is for you to take a dare from him. If you accept and vow to follow through, then once again, you will have to answer your next question truthfully. If you choose instead to reject it, you'll get another pass. Now, before you freak out and reject the whole idea completely, you should know that he won't ask you to do anything overly dramatic or unspeakably evil, like blow up a hospital or murder somebody. As a rule of thumb, most dares won't involve direct loss of life or any major felonies. However, they certainly won't be easy. Inflicting severe pain on yourself, doing something that terrifies the shit out of you, cutting off a treasured relationship, publicly humiliating yourself for someone you love. All these things and more. Things you might not even be able to imagine are completely on the table. If you're willing to go that far, to put yourself in that kind of position, you'll get your answer. However, if he manages to come up with that one thing you know you simply cannot do, or won't do, well then once again, you might as well call quits. Oh, and one last thing. Don't think you could just tell him you're going to do something and then not do it. If you accept the dare, and then don't follow through it, well, let's just say there will be consequences. Just suck it up and keep your promises, no matter what it was. Trust me, you're better off that way. Finally, when you're either gotten the information you wanted or given up on it completely, you may end a ritual by simply thanking the devil for accepting your request, bowing politely at the waist, and bidding him farewell. The surface of the mirror will seem to swim and flicker for a moment. Then, you'll be looking at your own reflection again. Only when you are absolutely certain that you are looking at your own true eyes again, may you turn away from the mirror, flick the lights back on, and begin dismantling your protection. Now this is important. Even if you have not got the information that you wanted, you must end the ritual in a manner before 66 seconds have elapsed. Well, I suppose that technically you have 66 minutes and 6 seconds. So, right? But if you are seriously going to try to cut it that close without any kind of timekeeping device, you're probably screwed anyways. I cannot empathize enough how important it is that you keep to the time limit. I'll tell you the reason behind for that for the end, which I'm going to skip ahead. I've still got a few important tips on how to play. Tip 1. Be very careful of what sort of personal information you give out. Try not to talk about yourself, especially your emotions and problems, any more than absolutely necessary. This guy knows human psychology like the back of his hand, and he will get inside of your head. It's like talking to Hannibal Lecter. Give him enough to work with, and even if you don't believe a single word he says, he'll still find ways to fuck with your mind like nobody else's business. If anything he asks makes you remotely uncomfortable, do not hesitate to lie through your teeth. There will be plenty of other questions. Tip 2. On a similar note, try to keep the game on track and moving briskly. Unstructured conversations of any kind are to be avoided. Chances are that at some point he will try to draw you off on a tangent, discussing something that fascinates you, analyzing the response that you give him, or finding some other excuse to speak at length about moving things forward. This is not only a waste of valuable time, but also another excellent opportunity to mess with him. 3. If you choose to give him a riddle, use one that you made up yourself. If your riddle has ever been written down anywhere at all, from the pages of The Hobbit to a long-lost tome of ancient magic, you already know the answer. That said, there still has to be a legitimate riddle, with an answer that makes logical sense from some angle. You can't just ask him something like, what's green has 10 legs and hops, and then claim for some inexplicable reason that the answer was marshmallows, nor can you ask him a straight question like, what have I got in my pocket? But he'll probably know that anyways. There are no hard and fast rules to determine whether a riddle makes sense or not, but you're a reasonable human being. Your ancestors ate from the tree of knowledge. For the love of crap, use common sense. 4. If you choose to take a dare, there's a slight chance that the devil will ask you to do something seemingly easy. Deliver a letter, for instance, or scribble a 10-digit number in a public restroom stall. If he does ask you something like this, and you have even a shed of common decency in you, do not accept. chances are that he is using you to further some sinister plot, one liable to ruin a lot of lives and harm a lot of people. Who knows, maybe you're the type of person who really doesn't mind throwing an unknown number of total strangers under a bus to find out what you want to know. But at least be aware that that is what you're doing. 5. Last but certainly not least, be very aware of the time. It might be helpful to do some practicing beforehand and get a feel of how long an hour is without a watch. The devil will probably put off discussing the things that you are most keen to find out as long as he can. As you near the 66-minute deadline, he'll start to try harder and harder to distract you, captivate you, and otherwise keep you playing until it's too late. He'll string you along, feed you little glimmers of false hope.
Keep thinking. Just a few more minutes, and we'll be straight.
Do not fall for it. Do not go over the time limit no matter what. Now you might be thinking that this game really doesn't sound all that dangerous so far. Threats of psychological damage rarely seem to carry the same weight as threats of physical damage, even though their costs are often just as great. I hate to burst your bubble, but the game is far from safe. There are plenty of ways for you to seriously screw yourself over both. There are plenty of ways for you to seriously screw yourself over both, physically and mentally, not to mention spiritually. And it is with these that I will conclude, in the vain hope that they may make some sort of impression. First, while you are speaking with the devil, do not let him out of your sight. Keep staring into the mirror no matter what happens. He will undoubtedly try various tricks to try to make you look away. You'll hear noises behind you, feel eyes on the back of your neck, see shadowy phantoms rising in the depths of your neck, and a cold breath will blow upon you from behind, spelling like a quick. A dead silence will settle, only to be interrupted by a loud smack directly behind your head, giving you about the worst jump scare you ever had. Hell, the devil might even abandon a measure of his own dignified facade and give the sudden jump of fine shock, shouting loudly and pointing behind you with a very convincing look of terror on his face. Whatever he might test you with, you must not look away from him. If you look away from him, if you lose sight of him for completely, for even a second, you will look back in the mirror to find him gone. Or not gone, out of the mirror, in the room, with you. Exactly how much of your body the police will find the next morning, and in what state it is in, will depend entirely on the sort of mood he is in. The same thing goes if you break any of the protections you laid down before beginning the ritual, interrupting the circle of salt, letting the red string unwind, knocking over a candle, or letting one go out. Any of these things will free him from the mirror. And then, well, you are all a bunch of creative horror junkies. I'm sure you can fill in the blanks. Now, on a different topic, you may reach a point in the game, probably after a long series of maddening, impossible questions, where the devil will ask you the deceptively simple question,
What is your full name?
You must not give it to him. Names could be a thing of great power. Although the devil will, of course, already know your name, telling it to him yourself is akin to inviting a vampire into your home. Your name is deeply synonymous with your own inner self, thus giving him your name is powerfully symbolic of giving him yourself. If you are foolish enough to make this mistake, all your protections will be for naught, and he will seize upon your unwitting offer with malicious glee, sealing away your soul and dragging it back with him into hell. At least, this way the police will find a completely identifiable body. As a matter of fact, your vacant shell will be totally unblemished, seemingly having dropped dead of sheer terror. Last, but certainly not least, there's the matter of what will happen if you go over the time limit. This is arguably the worst thing you could do. You won't think at first. The devil will give you no indication that you have in fact exceeded the time limit. You will conclude the ritual as if nothing has gone wrong. Perhaps as the devil's image in the mirror trembles and gives way, you will see a particularly nasty, triumphant smirk flash across his face. but this will be easily dismissed as your imagination. You'll turn around, you'll turn the lights back on, gather your belongings, and go to leave the room. But when you open the door, you will see nothing. That's right, nothing. Just a flat, white void extending infinitely in all directions. Only the room which was reflected in the mirror will now exist. Incidentally, if you turn back around to face the mirror again, you may catch a last glimpse of your own reflection. Perhaps it will even turn and favor you with a smirk and a cheeky wave before sweeping out the door into a perfectly normal church hallway outside. As you may have already figured out, you yourself are no longer in the church. Your soul is now trapped in the mirror, and the devil has taken the liberty of possessing your body, now that you're no longer using it. Pound on the glass and scream all you like. You'll never get out on your own, and no exorcist can help you. But don't worry, you're not in hell, right? At least, not necessarily. What you have to understand, see, is that a human soul stripped bare of its flesh is a deeply volatile and a vulnerable thing, especially when trapped in the land of the living. You are now an entity of purely mental properties, and as such, the barriers between what is real to you and what is imaginary has been completely dissolved. As you fill that reflected room with your anger, your sorrow, your fear at being trapped, these emotions will begin to coalesce, given form by your mind. If you're not particularly imaginative, these creatures won't be too terrible. You may not be able to inflict too much horror and pain. With time, you might even be able to teach yourself to get rid of them. If, however, your mind is haunted by monsters, a mind that is vibrantly creative and imaginative and more than usually twisted, well, there is no telling what horrors might come crawling their way out of that maelstrom, tasting sweet release from the confines of your subconscious, hungering for your terror and suffering. They will refuse to be banished, dragging you kicking and screaming with an endless positive feedback loop of pain and fear. Needless to say, if you are a regular patron of websites like, well, this one, you're probably pretty fucked. There's only one way to find release from the mirror and the world that you've created therein. They say that if you call to the devil once more and ask him to free you from the mirror, he'll be willing to take you out. For the usual fee, of course. Maybe if your imagination is twisted and powerful enough to create a personal hell that leaves you begging for the real thing, who knows? Maybe if your imagination is twisted and powerful enough to create a personal hell that leaves you begging for the real thing, those talents might be put to good use. There are over 7 billion people in this world after all. Even the devil himself can be messing with all their minds at once. Talented help is always appreciated. Of course, the corollary to your being trapped inside the mirror is that the devil now gets to do whatever he wants with your body until sunrise. At around the time, your body will mercifully drop dead from the strain of the possession. Autopsy will probably identify the cause as some kind of corollary event. Don't be too relieved though. It's perfectly capable of stirring up plenty of trouble in those few hours. For instance, he may decide to do something big and dramatic, like purchase a large meat cleaver and go on a murder spree, starting with the names on your address book, and working his way out to complete strangers if he has time. Or perhaps he'll focus on only one person, someone who trusts you completely, using your persona to get him or her alone and vulnerable. And then, well, no need to describe it here. Once again, I'm sure you can think of a few things. Starting to see why I call this the worst outcome yet? Of course, there's also a chance he won't lay a finger on any of your loved ones, instead deciding to do something a little more subtle, more insidious, like drop off a few nondescript unmarked packages on certain doorsteps in the dangerous part of town, or locate a particularly dusty, age-old text in the storeroom of your local library and intentionally misfile it in the young adults literature section. or whisper 7 very choice words in the ear of the distracted, young-looking redhead waiting for the 3 a.m. subway train. Or maybe he'll decide that in this age of waning superstition, not enough people are getting interested in his games, and the knowledge of them is in danger of being lost. Maybe he'll decide he needs to get the word out a bit more, do a bit of networking, attract some new suckers. Challengers. Maybe he'll take a quick peek at your browser history, see where the impressionable, curious minds are hanging out these days. Maybe he'll write a quick tutorial in modern parlance rather than some indescribable, obsolete, demonical text, and post it on the internet and see how many bites he gets. Maybe I really shouldn't have gone there. I don't think I should have. But if you've made it this far without shine, a little twist at the end isn't going to pull you off, is it? I'm sure there are plenty of intrepid adventurers amongst you with burning questions you'll like answering. And you are all a smart bunch. You know the pitfalls. You know the conventions. You live and breathe this sort of thing, do you not? There's no way you'd fall into the obvious traps, right? You're not some Dick or Jane off the street. After all, you're gonna bring a whole new level of competition. You would. Oh, excuse me. I think I hear someone calling me. What? You want out that bad already? Must be one hell of imagination you got over there.
Perfect.